Time for sound design. Today, something different. I want to revisit some beats and tracks I made about 10 years ago in 2014, beginning 15 in Ableton Live 9 and just to see what I made back then, and also open one of the sessions in Ableton and see if I can see what's going on and maybe fix something in the mix to make it sound a little bit better. Also, let's see if we run into any problems opening up these old sessions in Ableton. So without further ado, let's play some of these old tracks so you have some kind of an idea of what I was making back then. So here's a small selection of stuff that I was making. So the first one is kind of a bit of a ska vibe. It's from 28th of May 2014. I'll just play you a little bit. Okay, that's enough for now. So as you can hear, it sounds kind of quirky. It's kind of that kind of offbeat ska vibe. But some of the things that I noticed about this is that the bass is very loud. That's probably because I was monitoring or listening to on not so good speakers and also kind of cheap headphones. The other thing what you notice in this mix is that there's a lot of vinyl crackle that's very prominent. I used to do that a lot. And then in the kind of chorus, there's this brass instrument. It's the Native Instruments plugin, I think, and it doesn't sound that good. It sounds very sort of tinny and one-dimensional. And I tried to open this session in Ableton, but most of the stuff was missing. So samples were missing, like drum samples, but also I used a synthesizer. I think it was a Korg plugin, was also missing. So basically the session is kind of useless except for some of the MIDI. Going on to track number 2, still in the ska vibe. So this is November 2014. So this mix is a bit more imbalanced. You still have the brass from the plugin from Native Instruments, but the scratches sounds nice, and it really is sort of follows the structure of a song. So it actually gets into a vocoder singing part that I won't play here on this channel. Okay, next track. This is the last one in the ska genre. It's December 2014. So again, also with this one, the mix, you hear that the bass is very prominent and that the main kind of rhythm instrument is much lower in the mix. So I don't think that's very much in balance. Kind of with all these songs is like I was trying to find like one sort of main lead melody, like, you know, you have in pop music. So that's kind of, I guess, the kind of style of music. All right, let's go to something a little bit different. And this is also December 2014. So this has a really different vibe. It's called Travel Through C Major. The bass is still quite prominent. The drums are kind of weak, but it is a little bit more sort of abstract and flowing, I would say. Then the next one is March 2015 It's called One Sample 808 Kick Drum, and this is actually one that is a bit more experimental. So I guess the entire song, or at least the main part of the song, is made from one sample. And this is actually a session that I found and opened and had all the elements. So I will later look at this in Ableton, and maybe we can look at how to get the mix a bit better, get rid of some of the low end. But for now, let's continue with two more. So this one is from April 2015 called Jam 04 Boom Bap. Really nice drums, really grimy drums. They're a bit loud in the mix, I think. And this track was in a folder called MS-20, and that was at the same time, around the same time that I got an MS-20 Mini, the synthesizer, the reissue. So I think most of the synth sounds in this track is from an MS-20 Mini. So that's cool. And then one more track, it's called Transient, October 2015. And also here again, the low end is too much. The drums are very loud, but I was still trying to get that sort of main catchy melody throughout the track. So let's hear this one. So as you can hear, the low end is completely like massive, the bass, the drums, and then the main melody, like the top melody, is quite low in the mix, so that's not ideal. But all these tracks, except for the second one where I used the MS-20 Mini, was done in Ableton, also with samples and plugins, but not with actually hardware, because this was before I had actual hardware synthesizers like the Rev 2. So it's all done in Ableton. So that was cool. And a little bit embarrassing maybe. But let's open one of the sessions, the one with the 808 kick drum sample, and let's see what it looks like and if we can improve the mix somewhat. This is what the session looked like when I open it in Ableton. It's all MIDI and audio, and there's no plugins used as far as I could see, so that's why it actually still works. So let's start with the master. So I have a limiter on the master, so that's good. But let's use my current mastering or mixing strip. So this is how it sounds, the original. And let's do it with this new strip. It's probably not a big difference. As you can see, there's some automation here on the channel on off, but I didn't use any automation lanes. So let's put that in a separate automation lane so we can actually see what's going on. So now you can see that the first two channels and channel number 6 are off for the beginning and then they come in. Channel 3 is just completely off. Okay, let's start with the first channel. Let's solo this and let's see what it actually is. As you can see, in terms of arrangement, there is not a lot of arrangement. It's just basically a very long loop, 1.5 minute. Okay, let's see what's going on in terms of track number 1. Also, there is no markers and there's no names on the actual clips. So it's kind of, you have to figure out what's what. Let's loop this for 2 bars. So it's not just all 808s, because there is a snare and a hi-hat. Kick and snare and a hi-hat are on one channel. So these are the drums. So on the kick there's a noise and there's an ambience. No wait, the ambience is only on the snare. And on the hi-hat there's a... As you can see, there's no EQ on the individual drum sounds. There are 3 drum sounds on one channel. Today I would do this differently. I would put the EQ... I mean, there is an EQ, but it's an EQ3, it's not an EQ8. I would EQ stuff much more precisely. So if you just go back to the first one. So this is a compressor, but it doesn't seem to do a lot. So let's put an EQ8 on the kick and a utility to make it mono. We'll take the compressor off. Maybe leave it. Put an EQ8 on the snare. And here there's an EQ3, that's maybe what I used at the time, but an EQ8 is much nicer, much more clear. Also this white and dirty noise is on the low end, while it's a hi-hat, so it's much better just to put the frequency higher, because that's actually where it lives. Reverb sounds really dull. So let's put a new reverb on this. I think it's mostly the decay could be longer and then the dry red tone down. And in terms of the actual pattern, I also have a tom. There's no EQ on the tom, so let's do that too. Ooh. I would take the tom out actually. I put the hi-hats on the first, only the ones that are off beat, delay them, but the rest is just going to be on the beat. And for the hi-hats also change the velocity. And whether or not to have reverb on the snare, I mean, it is a certain style, it can be cool. I wouldn't do it that quickly now, or at least not that much. All right, going to track number 2. So here I have the 808 looped plus 26. Interesting that it's plus 26, so it's not plus 2 octaves. So let's put a tuner on here. There's never, on none of the tracks is a tuner. That's also a bit of a mistake. So now you can see it's a G sharp and it's not, it's actually sharp of a G sharp. So let's put this on 24, 25. If we want to tune it to a G. So this is an easy thing to improve your beats, is just to make sure that everything is in tune, whatever it is. I'm gonna tune it now to C major, but now it was a G sharp that was almost an A, but wasn't. It was between a G sharp and an A, so that is basically, that's not what you want. And that's why I always have a tuner on each channel, maybe not on the drum channel, but just to make sure that what is, that things are in tune. And then there is a redux with downsample, so that you get that metallic sound. And then this is a, yeah, some kind of delay modulation. Also no EQ, so let's put an EQ on this. And just let's cut out the low frequencies. And it's panned to the left. That's okay. So together with the drums. Cool. On to track number 3. This is a cool little sound. So it looks like it's a simpler with the 808 in there. Yeah, with the 808 sample, and then it seems to be a preset called Sweetness, and it's played in the octave 7, so it's played very high. And it's on loop. So let's put an EQ on this. So cut everything low off. All right, on to track number 5, which is called Cosmic Bass. Another preset, but it's also a simpler with the 808 sample in there. But there I played in octave 2. There's a compressor. There's a lot of compressors on every channel. There's a compressor, but that's kind of, you don't need that, because if you have just one sound that doesn't fluctuate in volume that much, you don't need to have a super light compressor on every channel. That's something I don't do. Nowadays, I almost don't use compressors. Only there's light compression on the mix bus and also when I do the master, but for the rest, there's not a lot of compression going on. But I guess 10 years ago, I thought about that in a different way. And then there is this kind of delay modulation plugin again. Not sure which one that is. And then a limiter and a wah-wah effect. But it's very low, so I'm gonna start with a utility to make it mono. Take off the compressor and the limiter and the wah. I'll leave that. And put an EQ there. All right, next track. So we have a simpler with the same 808 kick drum sample, an arpeggiator, and something else. It has some kind of modulation effect with delay, feedback. Some kind of phaser or flanger. Let's take it off for now. This is in octave 4 and 5. Let's first put a EQ on this. To get rid of the unnecessary low frequencies. Let's put a phaser flanger on there. But also a delay. But filter out all the low end, so only have the high left over to create a bit of stereo spread. And before I forget, let's put a tuner on here. Yeah, and now you can see that it is sharp of an A sharp, so we have to tune this sample a bit. Yeah, minus 25. So now it is in tune, but it's an A sharp, and we said we don't. So let's change this note to a D. Let's let it put it there. So now we have AF, so now it's in the key of C major, what we want. On to the next, the last layer. And that seems like a reversed 808 kick drum that is pitched up 40 and has a bunch of effects on them. So let's first put a tuner on this one. Let's turn off the effects for now. So that it's a bit flat. Okay, now it's a B. Let's put an EQ on this. Let's Let's take out all the low end. And then let's see what kind of effects we had on that. There is a slow churn modulation effect. That's cool. A compressor that basically just makes it louder, and a delay. And with this delay, it's interesting because it's trying to make it, I guess, a bit wider, but I don't use the filter on here. But that's something we can improve by using the same delay, just changing the settings. So it's -2 and 0.2. So now I would just do something like 0 and 3. So I would do the feedback a bit higher as well, and then engage this filter and maybe do a bit like mid frequencies. So these are all the changes in terms of sound design. Now we can look maybe a little bit at the arrangement, because there is not much of an arrangement, and maybe try to make it a little bit more interesting. So one thing I like to do is to clean up the file. So this track is redundant, this one is redundant. Let's put in some markers as well. So call this intro, and then here after 4 bars, the rest of the elements come in. But for the rest of the 1/2 minute, nothing happens. So let's create something after 8 bars, a change. Let's just put in some markers first. And then the last one we can call outro, because it's like the and then this is the end of the track. So what we can do after 8 bars is just a little bit of break. Let's mute some of the drums. And then maybe mute channel 2. In this track, I used channel mute to mute stuff. Nowadays, I just mute the actual clip, so you don't have to have an automation lane for that. And also I can use my MIDI controller to mute when I'm working on it. So let's change those automation lanes into actual clip mutes. So what I mean is, like here, I'm just muting the clip or the track, but I don't need an automation lane for that. So I'm going to delete this automation, remove this automation lane, and the same for this track. Delete and remove automation lane, and the same here. So delete and remove, bum. And then for this part, I'm going to mute track 3. And the outro can just be the same as the intro. So now there's some variation. There's a part 1, part 2, part 3. And this is part 1 again. And then it's the outro. The outro is the same as the intro. What I can do, actually, we extended a few bars. Call this feedback. And we're going to add some automation. So we're going to crank up the feedback of this delay on the last channel. So create an automation lane. And crank this feedback up to 95. And then the feedback just rolls, continues. Yeah, so that's basically what I would do if I would have made this track today. Of course, there's a lot of other things in terms of sound design. I would create more layers and more subtle variations. But just in terms of mix, it's kind of nice to look at these old files and try to make it a little bit better. So I'm not going to play the 2015 version first, and then I'm going to switch to the current updated version. And let's see if you can hear the difference in the mix. If it's a little bit better, the low end is a bit more contained. So let me know in the comments what you think about these old beats and the improved mix, which one is better. As always, thanks for watching, keep making music, and see you in the next one.